Hey everybody, Jason Yee here, and welcome to this transformational video on your slingshot. We call this the SlingShot 2, and this is a slingshot shooting system version 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a breakthrough just like with downhill skating. Now, downhill skating, the idea behind downhill skating was that there are a bunch of hidden mechanics that the top NHLers do, but nobody teach. And this is the exact same thing with the slingshot shooting system too. So where we are and what we're doing here is in this first week, we're going to go over something called becoming the bow. And this is the secret mechanic that we see the top NHL shooters using that is kind of confused by a lot of coaches. And you're going to get a full example of what that is, and we're going to compare it to other sports, and we're going to give you some coaching to actually practice. So in week 1 here, we're going to talk about becoming the bow. Then we're going to talk about killing common cues. And that means, first off, you want to kill the common cues so that you can become the bow and really let a slingshot go. And these common cues kill your shot too. Then in week 3, we're going to talk about aiming 2.0, how you can improve your aim with the slingshot shooting system. And then we're going to go over the slingshot and becoming the bow and how it applies to Austin Matthews, Nathan MacKinnon, and Elias Pettersson's slingshot. So that's what is coming up in the next 6 weeks. So without further ado, let's talk about becoming the bow. And let's take a look at this clip again with Marshawn where you can see this in action. And I'm about to break this down for you from the perspective of becoming the bow. And let's also take a look at Kucherov. I'm going to show you what's going on here that makes this such a lethal shot. I'm going to show you the mechanics that these top NHLers are doing and why they're doing it. So let's jump right into it. Becoming the bow. So when I say becoming the bow, what I want you to do is I want you to forget about all the cues you've been told about shooting. Like, for example, hands out, flex the stick, shift your weight, turn your hips, all these things that you've heard. You want to just forget about them. And you want to become the bow, just like as in the bow and arrow. And what you want to see is that rotational sports create a stretch and release just like a bow and arrow. And I want to draw your attention to a couple important things here. And so the first one being that every sport that is rotational in nature has a very similar setup, which is we have what's called a posterior oblique sling if we're talking about the passive structures. And in this case, we're talking about the posterior muscle sling. So we have two muscles here, like the lat dorsi and gluteus maximus, that when you rotate like this, it stretches these two muscles. But there are people that say that there is something called a posterior oblique sling that connects the passive structures from shoulder to glute. So the idea, and we're going to show you a couple moving examples of this, is that during the preload phase, the phase where you load the bow, sports like golf, sports like baseball, it's all using this bowing of the body. It's really becoming the bow. So let's look at a couple examples of this. First off, we have golf. So let's take a look at Tiger Woods, none other than Tiger Woods. So what I want you to pay attention to and see is that as Tiger is going here, notice how he's preloading and he's creating a bowing across his back. So what's happening here? Let's take a look. What he's doing is he's stretching as he's twisting like this. He's stretching his shoulder. He's creating a stretch from his shoulder across his back to his right hip here. And what this really ends up doing is it really ends up connecting his top hand, his left hand, all the way through his arm to his shoulder, and it stretches all the way across his back, all the way down here as he creates a preload. But then as he goes to actually swing, what is he doing? He's unleashing that bow just like a bow and arrow. So that's the first example. The second example we're going to look at is with Federer. Now, you're going to look at a very similar loading, preloading of the bow in the bow and arrow. So what do we see here? Watch as that left hand reaches across. What we're looking at here is take a look at this left hand. It reaches across. What does this do? It creates a stretch across the back to his right hip. And his right hip is internally rotated, so it's creating that stretch across here. And that's loading up that posterior oblique sling. So let me show you what that posterior oblique sling looks like. That's what he's loading up there, just like this. So that's what he preloads. That's him loading up the bow, just like Katniss Everdeen here, loading up the bow. And this is him unleashing that. Boom. Let's take a look at a couple hockey examples. I love this Marchand clip because you can really see it in action. So what you can really see is that as Marchand sets up this shot, notice how he takes his left hand, or his right hand rather, and moves it across his body. So this is just like right here, Marchand moving his hand across his body to create the stretch. Because where's the stretch being created? Well, it's being created right here, across the back, just like this. Back to Marchand, take a look here. He moves his hand across his body, creating a stretch. And then the other thing we're seeing is that he's stepping with this foot. So as he's stepping with this foot, this hand comes across, it's creating a stretch across the back like this. And just like with Tiger Woods, like I was saying there, you want to think of he's taking this shot and he's loading up from the ankle all the way to his top hand. That stretch is the bowing, that stretching of the bow, the preloading of the shot that is happening with these players. So that's that preload of the bow, and then there's the unleash of the bow. Yeah, let's take a look at Nikita Kucherov. So again, we're looking here, and what we can see is that as he catches this puck here, he's creating a stretch across his shoulder into his internally rotated left hip, all the way down into his ankle, and this connects to his hand, creating that bowing, loading the bow, preloading the bow, and then what ends up happening is you preload the bow, and then you unleash the bow. So coming back to the lesson here, you want to forget about all the cues you've ever been told about shooting and focus on creating the bow just like a bow and arrow. And all rotational sports create a stretch and release like a bow, and this is not a new idea in other sports. But in hockey, we seem to think that there's a bunch of other cues that are going to give you the shot that you're after, whereas the top players are actually creating a bowing and stretching across their back, across their posterior oblique sling, posterior muscle sling, however you want to use it. But in your coaching today, we're going to have you bring awareness to your repetitions. And what is the awareness we're going to bring? You're just going to simply feel some different cues without paying any attention to what you're doing with your body. And you're going to start with 100 reps of just passes. And what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to feel the stretch across your back on the preload. Now, what does a preload look like? When Stamkos pulls the puck back here, that's the preload. And he's going to preload and bow, and he's passing it to Kucherov. So when you are doing the passes, you're going to make sure to preload by pulling the puck back, and you're going to really feel the stretch across your back. You're going to do 100 reps of that. And you're not trying to do anything, you're not trying to do any cues, you're not trying to move your hand anywhere, you're just going to feel the stretch across your back on the preload. Then you're going to do another 100 reps of passes, and you're really going to make sure to internally rotate the blade side hip and then twist and drop your knob side shoulder to increase the bow stretch on the preload. So that's like what Kucherov is doing here. So what you can see out of Kucherov is that he's really dropping that shoulder, this right shoulder, and he's really internally rotating this hip. So this hip, this shoulder you can see is rotated, and this hip is rotated. So this hip is internally rotated this way, and this shoulder is rotated this way to increase the stretch. That's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to increase the stretch. Now, what you should find out of this is that your shot gets harder without more effort. So don't try to bring effort to it. Just increase the rotation, the internal rotation of your blade side hip, and increase the twist and rotation of your knob side shoulder to increase the bow stretching. Just like imagine Katniss Everdeen pulling that bow back even further. And then lastly, you're going to do 100 reps of passes and extend the stretch without increasing the tension. So you want to really feel the stretch all the way from your top hand. If you're a righty, it would be your left hand. If you're a lefty, it would be your right hand. All the way down across your back to the blade side ankle on the preload. Once you've done 100 reps of just feeling the stretch across your back, and then 100 reps with extra rotation, and then 100 reps feeling it all the way from your hand to your ankle, then you're going to do the same thing with shots. Now, the reason we do it with passes first is to get that rhythm, get that ease without trying to generate power. Then with the shot, that rhythm and ease should come very naturally.